Well, this is it. We've reached the final day of the election campaign in a race that's been like no other. No other campaign in history compares to it. We've seen 2 serious attempts on Donald Trump's life. And how grateful are we that he is still here and he has made it to this point? Keep up those prayers for Trump. We've seen President Joe Biden make a fool of himself so badly he had to be kicked out of the race by his own side. And we've seen another campaign entirely by Kamala Harris, whose strategy has been to duck and weave and hide from the media, rely on those brat summer vibes from celebrities. And although she eventually fronted up for interviews, she still managed to make it through this entire time without holding a press conference. Not one. But here we are. Tomorrow, votes will be counted and the 47th President of the United States will be elected. Who's it going to be? We will find out. But this is an interesting development and a boost for Donald Trump happening in the final hours of the campaign. The world's biggest podcaster, Joe Rogan, has just publicly endorsed the Republican candidate.
And to me, it's very big because he's the biggest there is, I guess, in that world by far. Somebody said the biggest beyond anybody in a long time. And his name is Joe Rogan, and he's never done this before. And it just came over the wires that Joe Rogan just endorsed me. Is that right? Thank you, Joe. That's so nice. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that stuff.
Donald Trump sat down with the podcaster for 3 hours where no topic was off limits. The JFK files, aliens, the border, you name it. The episode has been viewed more than 65 million times on YouTube and on X. And this endorsement comes just hours after billionaire Elon Musk joined Joe Rogan and opened up about why he's supporting Donald Trump.
Well, I'll say it again, man. I think this is the last election. If Trump doesn't win, this is the last election.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think people, and a lot of people are waking up and realize that have been lifelong Democrats. Guys like Bill Ackman, guys like Chamath.
Yeah, exactly.
Tulsi Gabbard switched over to the Republicans.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of people who their whole life they've been left-wing and they realize, like, I can't do this anymore.
You and I used to be Democrats.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
On the final day of the campaign trail, media personality Megyn joined the Republican candidate. Just last week, she was criticising the Trump campaign for its Madison Square Garden rally, which she labelled as being too bro-y and claimed that it risked isolating Republican women. Well, today, she joined Donald Trump on stage with a message to women about why she believes Donald Trump is the better candidate to deal with women's issues.
President Trump closed the border. Kamala Harris opened it by choice. It wasn't accidental. She said it would be humane. That's what she and her boss believed. Tell it to Lake and Riley's family. There was nothing humane about it. He closed it. They opened it. It was an intentional choice, and there's no reason not to believe they won't do it again. The boys should not be in the girls' sports. The boys should not be in the girls' bathrooms. The boys should not be in the girls' locker rooms. Peyton McNabb, North Carolina sophomore in high school, slammed so hard in the face by a volleyball hit at her by a boy pretending to be a girl, she suffered traumatic brain injury and permanent paralysis. Kamala Harris looks at her and says, be kind, suck it up. And that's what's right. Why do our girls have to face brain damage in order to be kind to boys who want to invade their sports? And by the way, they are going into the women's prisons. She changed the law in California to make sure the taxpayers would pay for their sex change operations. She was not just following the law, she changed the law. President Trump will stop it.
It's interesting when you look at the people who are publicly throwing their support behind Donald Trump this time around. And looking on X, there are never Trumpers speaking out about why they have made the switch.
Remind us, have you voted for Trump previously?
I was honestly a never Trumper.
Meanwhile, pop stars Lady Gaga and Katy Perry are set to perform at Kamala Harris's last rally. And of course, Oprah Winfrey is expected to speak at the event in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. And it appears as though Kamala Harris has really changed her tone. Just last week, she was connecting Donald Trump to Hitler. Now she's going for a more optimistic vibe.
This is shaping up to be the key swing state that will decide who becomes the next president of the United States. Kamala Harris has spent all her events in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump, however, he went to North Carolina first, and it's there he was talking about tariffs. It's a favourite of Donald Trump. He's promising tariffs, and he says it's going to stimulate the economy. Of course, there's a mix of opinions on that, but we know the economy is a big driver for voters in this election. What he said is he's going to level tariffs at Mexico on day one, and he's going to tie that to the number of people crossing illegally at the US-Mexico border.
If they don't stop this onslaught of criminals and drugs coming into our country, I'm going to immediately impose a 25% tariff on everything they send in.
Over the past 4 years, Kamala has orchestrated the most egregious betrayal that any leader in American history has ever inflicted upon our people.
And of course, if Donald Trump wins, Australia does have a free trade agreement with the US, but we're not immune to any tariffs ourselves. So this is going to be a big factor to watch over the coming weeks, months, if Donald Trump is successful. But there's no guarantee that Donald Trump's getting over the line. The polls are very tight. And in fact, Kamala Harris has been pulling ahead in some key places, including, quite surprisingly, in Iowa, of all places. Now, that might too be tariff connected for all those farmers who are worried about tariffs affecting their exports. But at the same time, what we're seeing is Kamala Harris putting in a very busy few last weeks. The last few days have been no exception. She's been out at multiple events before her major event in Philadelphia this evening.
So, Pennsylvania, I'm here to ask for your vote. I'm here to ask for your vote. Pennsylvania, the race is not yet over, okay? We got a lot of work to do, and we have got to finish strong. And make no mistake, we will win. We will win.
While we're talking about how tight these polls are, what I want to say again before we start getting the results tomorrow is a tight result in a swing state will ultimately give whoever wins all of the state's electoral college votes. So we can have even just a few thousand votes decide in this country of over 300 million people who will be the next president of the United States. But that may well end up being a big margin in the electoral college. So that's a big part of the analysis we're going to be doing tomorrow. It's also a big part of why there's concern that there will be some kind of conflict after the election result, and especially if it takes a while for us to get a result. The thing is, 2024 is very different from 2020. Many of the people involved in the January 6th riot at the Capitol have been charged and convicted. Over 900 people have been sentenced to some kind of jail time. If you're not one of those supporters who's already in jail, you're probably looking at the situation and thinking there's not much in it for you to try and do the same thing again. The BLM riots aren't happening. The George Floyd element just simply isn't there this time. And when we're talking about the pro-Palestine protests, there's any chance that could happen as well, but there's certainly nothing significantly on the radar here. We are seeing local law enforcement very prepared. The fences have been going up, and they've been quite specific, saying that that's a deterrent factor. Small businesses have been putting boards up. For many of them, that's an insurance decision. If they don't get it up and something happens, they probably can't claim. Not something you want to waste your time on. So I know there's been a lot of speculation about this. I would say for now, there's really not any kind of instance that I would say we have to be ready for something like this in DC beyond just always being ready. And it's more likely that there'd be something locally based at a polling booth like what we saw in Arizona in 2020, or a lone wolf kind of incident, which is always a risk in America, a country with hundreds of millions of guns. So as we get into this final 24 hours, it is notable just how tight it is. Here's Mick Mulvaney, former Chief of Staff to the White House, saying that he does see just how tight this race is and how this could be a cause for conflict.
There have been a couple of races where the Republican has won the Electoral College and lost the popular election. People say those are close elections. Donald Trump won easily in the Electoral College in 2016, lost the national popular vote. But yes, it just feels like it's very, very close because the country feels very divided. Walk down an ordinary street in this country and half the folks are going to be for Trump and half the people are going to be against him. And I think that's going to carry through on Tuesday night.
So tomorrow we'll potentially find out if we're going to have the first female president of the United States or the first president to win a non-consecutive term since Grover Cleveland after surviving 2 assassination attempts, and how many lawsuits. It really will be one for the history books no matter what happens tomorrow evening.